So Bruce, this past Sunday, was it? You went up to the fish show up in northern Jersey.
Yes,
Tell us about it.
It was really an impressive show. It was well attended. There were a lot of people there. A lot of different booths with manufacturers displaying some things and just individuals displaying things. A lot of mini tanks, and they were very impressive. People had really done quite a job of aquascaping. They had, in the mini tanks, many of them had pieces of wood and rocks and different levels with plants at different levels. It was very impressive.
Well, now, how big is a mini tank in your mind? Because I've always wondered about how they set up these big tanks, these shows, but a mini tank.
Well, mini tanks, I would say on the average, were probably about 5 to 7 gallons.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. You can set that up easy in a show.
And very impressive the way they aquascaped them and used wood as well as rocks and ledges and things like that. Made some very impressive displays, particularly with the plants involved in them too. They must have come to this, set this up. I'm not sure what they did, but it would look like they would have had to come in a week before, but maybe not. Maybe they just came in the night before and set everything up for the public, because the show ran Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So you think they brought in big containers of their own water? I would assume they're going to protect their fish, as opposed to how are you going to get water in one of these big convention centers, right?
Well, I'm sure you can get the water, but with difficulty.
Yeah, so they probably come with these gallon containers and fill the tank up with water from home.
Water that they have at home.
Okay, that would make
Probably,
sense.
Yeah. Minimal number of fish in the mini tanks at any rate. And mostly the fish were not for sale. But there was one booth that had platinum angelfish and black angelfish, which were outstanding.
What kind of price on something like that?
$10 each.
Not bad.
And well,
Oh,
wait a minute,
small.
they were only this size.
Oh, okay.
$10. I was tempted to buy the black ones because they, I mean, the body and fin conformation was excellent.
Yeah.
And they must have had 100 of them in each one of those tanks. Those tanks were fairly good size to hold that number of fish. A lot of the displays, there was smoke rising from them because they were running CO2.
Really?
Yeah. So it was kind of, I'm wondering at first what the smoke was, and then I realized what was creating it, the CO2 coming off the water.
So were these, what do they call that, between an aquarium and a terrarium, what's in between? Where you have like a pond and then plants outside?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Is that what they were? In other words, sometimes I've seen...
I think in some cases that's what they were doing,
okay, because I've seen the fog on
Yeah.
the water type situation in
Yeah,
those
exactly.
environments.
And they were selling CO2 in a lot of different places with the CO2 cartridges and things like that. They had them on display, and I guess you could order them and get them delivered to you, but I wasn't interested in that. And the CO2 that I have in the other tank is sufficient for what I work with most of the time.
Talk about, last time we were here, you didn't have your CO2 set up, and now you do, back in that right-hand
I was
corner.
getting kind of lazy with it.
And so, talk to me a little bit about that setup.
Well, I'm not sure if they even make that anymore, but it's a CO2 ladder. So it keeps the CO2 in the tank as long as possible. As it goes back and forth, it's dissolving in the water. And it does help to feed the plants a lot. I mean, the main nourishment that most of the plants need is CO2. Yeah, they need other ingredients too, but CO2 is the major thing that they use for growth.
Now, I was impressed just before you and I were talking, and I saw one of your canisters up there, and I thought this would be expensive to get those refilled, but you described how this is a do-it-yourself type CO2 device. So I'm going to zoom in on that canister.
Okay.
Why don't you just describe the role that that has? What do you do with that?
Well, you fill up the bottom, about 1/8 of it, with sugar, and then you put 1/4 of an ounce of yeast on top of it, and you fill it up almost to the top, and you stir it up good, and then it hangs on the back of the tank. That's what that tubing is attached to. that you can see on the 55-gallon tank. And that will last for probably about 4 or 5 days, and then you'd have to redo that canister and you know, clean it up good, empty the liquid out of it, clean it up with a, I have a sponge that I use for that on a stick, and just swirl it around in there so you scrape it out pretty good, and then you reset it.
That sounds fairly reasonable versus what I thought.
It's not that difficult to do, and it's not that time consuming. It gets away from me, let's put it that way.
But you've got several canisters, so you can fill up another one when you're ready.
Yeah, I have enough to do another tank, and the third one got broken. I've got to re-glue it or something to repair it, and then I can use it in a third tank.
Can't help but notice the beautiful discus in there. Are those part of your trip up to the Meadowlands?
That was a separate trip. I went to Discus Madness to pick that up.
All right, we'll stay back on the Meadowlands fish show. Talk to me a little bit more about what that was like.
Yeah, there was a display from Estes Gravel Company. You know, they have all the different colors of gravel, different sizes and so forth. And I was thinking, you know, when I set up some tanks in the basement that I'm going to eventually do, I wanted to get some black. I do the backs of my tanks all in black. And I wanted to do one tank that would be black gravel in addition to it. Would really kind of stand out. I've done that before, but I haven't done one in a long time. At any rate, he had some gravel there that I saw, and I said, well, do you have this in a smaller size? He said, yes, we do, but it's sand size. It's not gravel anymore.
Okay.
So
when you said size, I thought you meant the size of packaging, but you were talking about the granularity of it.
Yeah, the granular size.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And the granular that he had was okay. I just preferred it to be a little bit smaller. But in between the sand that he showed me and the granular that I saw in terms of physical size. And,
I can't help but notice, I'm zooming in on you, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Zooming in on your substrate here, and yours is a finer gravel than I use in my tanks.
Yeah.
And that would be good for the food being still available for the fish to pick up?
Right. The disadvantage to coarser gravel is that food particles will fall down in between them. The fish can't get at them, and it can lay in there and decay. So that's the disadvantage to using larger sized pieces of gravel.
Ray used to use pool filter sand.
Okay.
So he had a real fine sand, which worked out really good for the plants.
Yeah. Now the problem with sand is it can pack a little bit too tight, and then you can get a buildup of gases in the bottom of it because they can't escape. There's no water circulation.
Okay.
And so it's a problem with fine sand as opposed to a small grain, let's put it that way.
So what were they actually selling at this fish show?
Well, there wasn't a lot that they were actually selling. I think they were looking to take orders.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, mostly everything was on display. They did have some plants at several of the booths. You could buy the plants.
And I'll have you show us those plants as we move between the tanks later, okay?
Sure. But their fish, mostly they weren't selling the fish either, except for those angelfish that I mentioned, which were gorgeous. But I just couldn't see $10 a piece for that size of angelfish.
Yeah, yeah.
I was still tempted, and I almost went for that, but I stayed clear of doing it.
So exactly what did you come away from the show with in your hand?
That one betta that you saw over there on the counter.
All right, and I'll show that in just a second here.
Yeah, I got $15 worth of various plants that I bought all from the same source because they all looked like they were in pretty good shape and well taken care of. Can you see that betta over there?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Tell us a story about the betta.
That betta, when I got to that booth, they had probably at least 50 bettas there. And they were collecting money for some sort of a non-profit organization. I forget what it was at the time. At any rate, the lady there said, all you have to do is put one of these ping pong balls in the empty cups. And the cups that have a decal of the betta on them, you win a betta, and of your choice, whichever you want. And she said there are no losers, so don't worry about, you know, if you don't get one in the proper cup. But in 2 tosses, one of the ping pong balls bounced around and landed in a cup that had the decal on it, so I won a bet anyway. But then it was only $2.
Neat idea, and it's a beautiful looking betta too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And I've
pretty.
been looking for a nice red one for a while.
Oh, that's beautiful. He just turned and flared his fins for us.
They had very limited bettas at Discus Madness. He said they were going to be bringing more bettas in, but they had very limited number of those. He said they didn't get that much call for the bettas.
All right, so now, since you're talking about Discus Madness now, that's
Yeah.
a different place you went to. Let's talk about that. You have some discus here in the 55-gallon tank that we're showing.
That's right.
So talk about it.
There's 3 different varieties in there. The reddish colored ones are called either flame or fire discus, I forget which. The ones that are right out to the front, the 2 that are out to the front, I forget what color they call them. And there's some blue discus to the back of the tank. They're separated from each other. And they had a special name, but I don't, maybe later on I'll recall the name for that particular color that they use for it at any rate.
Mm-hmm.
You could just call them blue discus also, that would fit. But they had a specific name for that.
And so, tell us more about the discus shop as a whole. You said it was more than just discus.
Man, a lot more than discus. As a matter of fact, they had enlarged to more than double their previous size because the place next door to them had gone out of business. So they expanded, they leased that and they expanded into that. So they had all kinds of fish there. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, there's lots of discus and different sizes and all different colors. Many more colors than what you see here. And in addition to that, they had several tanks of different kinds of tetras. As a matter of fact, this tank behind me has Rasbora. I only had 1 left in this tank. I bought another dozen of those. And I bought another dozen Cardinal tetras in this 38-gallon tank behind me.
Now, I was wondering, as you were talking about your black background on the tanks and the fact you're looking for that black sand for your tanks, what kind of fish would you put into a black tank? I'm thinking of your Cardinals when I say that.
Cardinals would be an excellent choice, that's right. As a matter of fact, you'll see in this tank, there's 2 Cardinal tetras in there that were just outstanding. I mean, they're jumbo size. I've never seen Cardinals as big as that. And they had 2 tanks of them there. And I said, how do you guys get them to this size? They said, well, we have a supplier we get them from.
Oh.
That raises them to that size.
So what kind of price do they put on a jumbo?
$10 a piece.
Okay.
So I took 2 of them in order to encourage my other Cardinals that they can get up to this size if they work at it.
Yeah, challenging, but
Yeah.
neat idea. We'll come over to that tank in just a minute.
Now, in this 55-gallon tank, there's also 5 Corridors catfish in there. Corridors sturba, I believe they're called. And they're quite attractive. They had a special on them, I think it was $13 a piece.
I was going to say,
Or
I've
if
seen
you
those
bought-
catfish. They're
if
very
you-
pretty with those
Yeah,
yellow spines on them.
that's right, yeah.
But they've always been so expensive, especially if you get anything
And
of size.
if you bought 5 of them, the price came down to $11 a piece. So I did buy 5 of those.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, two quick thoughts, if I may interject. One,
Sure.
going back to the Cardinals for just a minute.
Yeah.
Ray's mother, when we were kids and had, we would come in and buy 2 fish, okay?
Okay.
Not like today, we go in and buy a dozen or something. It's a
Right.
stage of life we can do this. But anyway,
Sure.
she at one point in time set up a long tank, and I was fascinated with it because it was black sand, black background, and she bought what I thought was 100 neons and put it over the fireplace. Now, that makes it sound like it was a really huge tank. Ray corrected me later on, recently, as we were talking about it. He said, Jim, there was only 20 neons in there, and it was like a 2.5-gallon tank.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And they caught some type of neon disease and wiped them out.
All right, yeah.
But for the longest while as a kid, this was the epitome of luxury, having to be able to have a whole tank full.
Yeah.
And recently, you and I saw on YouTube, at one of the suppliers that somebody did a video of, a tank of neons. There had to be 3,000 neons in that tank. Remember the one we were talking about?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And more recently, I was at the Hidden Reef, and they had a tank. I would guess there was probably about 500 cardinals, wild cardinals.
Wild cardinals.
And I bought 10 of them. They were a reasonable price. So I got
What size were they?
probably about smaller than what you have in the tank behind it. We'll look at in just a minute.
Okay.
So they weren't jumbos, that's for sure.
Okay.
But that tank looked gorgeous. It's one of those say, oh, give me 100, why not? You know.
Yeah.
And they were about $2.99 a piece or something like that, and you get 10 for whatever.
Yeah.
But then I went down the aisle, and there was a tank there, and there was 5 larger neons. I mean, these were what I would call jumbo. I'm not sure how it would compare with. You're going to have to show us which ones of the jumbos you're talking about here when we look at the other tanks. But I said to the guy, they were in the different tanks. They weren't the wild ones. Right. I'm not sure the benefit of wild versus not. But anyway, and so I bought them, and they were like $2.49 a piece. Okay. And so that's the good news. The bad news is it's a week later, and I don't have any of them left because I put them in that boat tank that I often show, and they disappeared. The other day I saw there was still one left, so somebody's eating them.
Oh, I see.
And I had that huge upside-down catfish that is like a whale.
Yeah.
He could be doing it at night when they settle down, stuff like that. Possible, so anyway, it was expensive fish food.
Yeah.
It was probably $10 or more of 5 neons that didn't make it. I should have put them in with the schools in the other tank, as you've seen them at recent videos. But anyway, the other thought I had just went out of my head. Let's see, it was the neons, and you were talking about. And those neons were probably bought from your shop. What was your shop's name? Tropical Petland?
Tropical Petland.
In Metuchen, New Jersey. Tropical Petland, Metuchen, New Jersey. We're talking about back in the 1950s and 60s.
That's
okay?
right.
And so I can't imagine what 20 neons cost her back then.
Well, probably,
but it was well out of our range.
Probably you don't remember, but I was in a small 3-store leased building to start off with, and it was called Gateway Pet Shop.
I just passed it on the way in here.
I was there for 5 years.
Right.
And then we moved to Main Street. When I say we, my partner and I, who I met just before my other business was going out, and we decided to give it another shot. We felt Main Street would be a definite enhancement. We'd have more street traffic that would draw the public.
Now, what year are you talking about here, roughly?
59.
59, okay.
Yeah.
And Metuchen is a really neat town. It's a commuter town, about a mile square, and it is a downtown with lots of shops on the main street, and you're right in the heart of it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, years ago they used to call it the Brainy Borough.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And a lot of people used to get upset with that name, like they were putting on air, so to speak. But it was called that because there were a lot of Rutgers professors that had established themselves in the town. So that's why it was called the Brainy Borough, not because people were smarter than everybody else.
And Rutgers was over in New Brunswick, which was about 10 miles away, so
That's
it was a good town for them to live in.
Sure.
Yeah, really nice town.
Yeah.
Great town to grow up in. As kids, we worked for every store in town, it seemed, Ray and I. He worked for the florist, I worked for Danforth, I worked for you, I worked in the jewel shop. It was a great town for a kid to grow up in and have plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, I had a paper out when I was a kid.
Didn't we all?
I had that for a couple of years, and I probably earned between $10-15 a week, depending on tips. Yeah, at that time. And I used to go around to different houses and try to get some additional business by cutting grass for people. But at that time, everybody they'd tell you, I cut my own grass, son.
Uh-huh.
Now there's landscapers all over the place,
yes,
charging us, I think, a small fortune to keep people's lawns going. And come in and cut it once a week, and but back in that time, people pretty much did for themselves.
Well, it's funny because Ray and I both worked for the vegetable truck man. He had a converted bus. He would go down to Perth Amboy early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning, pick up grocery stuff, vegetables and tomatoes and cucumbers, you name it.
Okay, would he get them from farmers or what?
There was an outlet down there in Perth Amboy,
Okay.
down by the docks or something, I guess. And he would load up, and he would come into Metuchen 2 or 3 times a week, drive up and down the streets, beeping his horn, and people would come out and get on the bus and go back and pick out their fresh groceries.
Okay.
Well, Ray and I worked for him, and we would work on the bus, or we'd go running up and down the streets with something in hand. Like, I can still remember being given a tray of 2.5 dozen eggs, and go over the next block. Each time we do it, he'd give me instructions. Go up the next block, and the eggs are so much, and let's see, and he'd look around, see what he had a lot of, and put a price on it. All right, we'll have 5 pounds of potatoes for 25 cents. So see what you can do. And you'd go over the next block while he worked the street he was on, and you'd knock on the door, "Vegetable man!" And somebody'd come to the door, and "I'll take 5 pounds of potatoes." Okay, so you put the 2.5 dozen eggs down on the ground. You'd run back to the bus, get 5 pounds of potatoes, come back, and she would have a dollar bill. And those days, we would then, "I'll be right back," take the dollar bill back, get change, come back, give her 75 cents, and she'd give you a dime tip.
Yeah, okay.
And we did that for a couple of years, and we'd work together. It was really a great growing up environment to work in.
Yeah, that's right.
And then on the day off, we would, like you just described, do other things, such as there was an old farm out in the Meadowbrook area, which was had huge blackberries. There must have been cultivated blackberries in the day when the farm was there. It wasn't there anymore. It was just a dilapidated, house.
Sure.
We used to hang out there in the woods.
Sure.
And I would go out there and I would pick blackberries, quart containers of blackberries, and they were huge. And then I would go to a couple of customers that we had seen on the vegetable route who were interested in blackberries, and so on my bike ride across town
Sure.
and sell them the quarts of blackberries.
Yeah.
So money was a good lesson. You work hard, you got money. With money, you could do things such as buy
That's right.
fish from your tropical pet land,
Sure.
and it was a good learning experience.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember there were wild blackberries growing in several places around us. Man, when they came into season, we'd be out there picking them, and I think we'd eat as many as we picked as
Yeah.
we were picking,
Yep. Yep.
which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. You should probably take them home and rinse them off first. But as kids, you don't even think of those things.
It made us stronger.
Probably.
I think we're too pristine with our kids these days. They don't build up immunity to stuff because they're not
That's right.
exposed to it.
Yeah, yeah.
We would eat things that had dirt on them. Who
And
knows?
in the summertime, when the temperature would get up to 80, 85 degrees, man, those blackberries at that temperature just melted in your mouth.
good memories, right?
Yeah. A lot better than the ones that you get nowadays you throw in a refrigerator so they're cold when you eat them. Boy, at that temperature, with the sun beating on them, they were just extra special.
I learned how to make a sandwich from Mike Berardi. I can't believe I remember that name from more than 50 years ago, half a century ago. Mike Berardi was the vegetable man. And we would pull into your gateway shopping area with those 3 stores.
Okay.
This was before you were there, I think. There was a delicatessen there. And we would deliver the fresh stuff, lettuce, tomatoes, and so forth. And we would hit there around 11:30. And so we would then buy half a pound of American cheese, half a pound of bologna, and a loaf of bread that had just been delivered by Fry Hopper's bread man.
Sure. Yeah.
And we would get on the bus and we would make sandwiches. And I mean, we made sandwiches because he would say, "Now here, get this tomato over here, chop this one up. You need to put some cucumbers on it. Here's a nice fresh lettuce." So we had nice fresh everything on these sandwiches. Never had any mayonnaise or anything like that. It was just fresh vegetables.
Yeah, I understand.
And the back of the bus, we had wooden crates of sodas, flavored sodas, orange, grape, cherry, you name it.
Yeah.
Warm, but that didn't bother us.
No.
And so you'd get this quart bottle of soda. You'd have this sandwich, which was probably 5 inches thick with fresh stuff, and we would have lunch. And the bread was as fresh as it could be. I mean, I can taste it even today.
Yeah, I know. The things we used to do years ago were just so outstanding, and by today's standards, I don't think we would appreciate it, or kids of today wouldn't appreciate it.
Well, it was funny how that cascaded, because I would go down to my grandmother's house, and she would have friends over, and she'd say, "Maybe Mike, make us some sandwiches," because I was famous for making these sandwiches I learned from Mike.
Okay.
And we would make sandwiches for these elderly ladies, and they had got such a kick out of this teenager making sandwiches and having fun with them.
Sure.
And it was a good life. It was a good life.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
So there you are. You opened up your store in 1959 in Metuchen. tropical pet land right in the heart of
Yeah,
town.
yep, that's right. And we had success right from the start, right from the get-go.
We had good people. You and
Yeah.
Roy were a good pair.
Yeah, we were.
And it was a fun place to go. Ray and I hung out there. I mean, we would actually catch fish and sell it to you, and then we'd
Okay.
buy fish with whatever we sold.
Sure.
But the two of you were, it was like family.
Yeah.
I can remember on the far wall, the left-hand wall, was where you had the Tubiflex worms in a bin
right.
with water running through them to keep them
Yep.
fresh.
Yep. It was fresh running cold water through them all the time, and they did stay very healthy there. There
And
was a nipple that was in the wooden box that was sealed up that we kept the Tubiflex worms in. They'd get delivered once or twice a week. I forget whether it was twice or just once. I'm not sure. And the fellow we got them from, I remember his name was Stanley. And he made the wood box for us to keep it in, and there was an overflow pipe coming up off the top, so the extra water would just flow out. And man, keeping them in fresh water, they were just outstanding.
They were.
Tubiflex worms.
Yeah, any place you go today, it's in standing water, and they stink because they're sewer worms. Let's face it.
Exactly.
And Ray and I, we had a stream that we would go to up on Plainfield Avenue, and it was a sewer stream. I mean, it wasn't fresh. The water was pretty clean by some standards, but the fact that Tubiflex worms were surviving in that substrate, obviously it was a sewer stream of some type. And we would actually try and recover some for ourselves. I don't think we ever did much with that as much as we recognized what was in the mud because we bought it from you.
Yeah. Well, I remember.
How many tanks did you have there, roughly?
How many tanks?
Yeah, they were in tiers of 3.
We had 45 10-gallon tanks, and then we had a couple of display tanks. I remember there was one 55 up near the front of the store, and I think a 70 way in the back.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
It was a great shop to go in. You always had good fish,
Oh yeah.
and yet I think I learned from you that the business was such that you had to have, the markup had to be like 100% to recover the losses that you had in travel and everything else, right? Is
In
that
some
right?
cases, it was 300% markup.
Really? Because the losses
In
were
order
so
to make
heavy.
up for the losses that you would take.
Now we're talking back in the 59 time frame, that's a 40, 50, that's 60 years ago, so it wasn't overnight express of fresh fish with UPS
No,
and
that's
stuff
right.
like that.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we used to go to the airport sometimes to pick up fish that were being delivered from Florida or whatever, and the containers they came in were circular, so the fish couldn't get hung up in a corner somewhere
Okay,
and wind up
dead.
dead because it couldn't get oxygen
Right.
because it was kind of stuck in the corner. And there was an opening at the top that was circular as well. They were metal containers. I think they were zinc, if I remember correctly.
Wow, so you had to send them back.
Yeah, you had it. That's right.
So it was shipping both ways. Wow,
Yeah.
that couldn't have been cheap.
But in some cases, some of the outfits would just sell you the containers. They didn't even want them back.
Really?
Yeah.
What would you do with them?
Well, we just use them for storage, or sometimes some people would come in and buy several fish, so we'd put them in this container and
Okay.
take them home in
All
that.
right. All right.
And so that worked out. Plastic bags weren't available at that time.
I was going to say, well, what did you put them in? I don't remember. That's right. There weren't plastic bags at the time.
Cups.
Cups. Huh? I can't remember that.
Cups with, what would you call it? They were sealed on the inside, I guess with wax,
Okay.
is what it was.
Yeah.
And we had cups of different sizes for different size fish.
Wait, are
That's how we
these the
sold them.
square containers that like
No,
you
yeah,
get
they
Chinese food in? That type of cup?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
we did use
now
some
I
of
remember
those.
it.
That's right.
Yeah,
We did use
okay.
some of those.
Yeah.
And we did have some circular cups that had lids for them,
Uh-huh.
but they were more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old Chinese containers worked very well at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about old, and we had them in a couple different sizes, so that depending on the size fish or the number of fish people were buying, that would determine how big a container you would use. In the 55-gallon tank, there's 2 pearl gouramis in there too. I'd asked the fellow to get me a male and female, and Well, they're a little immature to tell the sex on, but I think he got it right. He said, I think they're mostly males in there, so I'm not sure if I got you 2 males or a male and a female, but I think it's worked out a male and a female. So that worked out well.
You've seen in my videos, my pearl gouramis are doing well. I just lost one in the boat tank.
Yeah, how did that work out with the water change and everything?
I did a full water change, and as you suggested, I did some water tests because I had a very fancy or extensive water testing kit from Ray's fish room after he passed. And so I did check. There is no ammonia.
Okay,
that's good.
Well, that's good.
It's one thing you want to check. And as far as the pH goes, 6.8, 6.9. Now,
okay, that's a
for
good
that
pH.
tank, which is angels and gouramis, that's good.
Right.
There's some platies in there, but in the office tank, which is all live bearers,
Right.
you really want it to be up in the 7.2, 7.5 range, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't test that one.
They prefer the more alkalinity.
Yeah.
But most of the fish will do pretty well if you're near the neutral, 7.0
Right.
pH. So
Your plants, and I'm looking at the 55-gallon right now, are just gorgeous. So this fertilization program, which I've been advertising in my videos as Bruce's fertilization program, is really working out well for me, I'll tell you.
okay, that's good.
And in fact, I'll tell you what. Why don't you take that plant I brought you and put it in the tank so I can get a picture of it and show you. Bruce, first time I came up here, insisted that I take some plants home with me from his overgrowth of plants, and I loved it. And so I'm returning the favor now by bringing back just a sprig of one plant. And that there may be some leakage of water, but anyway, if you take that out and put it in the tank, we'll get to see what it looks like. And just realize, I'll tell you the story of it when you do that. If you're okay with putting it in your tank directly, it came out of my tank.
Yeah, let me just get my put my sweatshirt off here.
Yep, know the feeling well. I often work on the tanks first thing in the morning and before I get dressed because I won't get my sweatshirt wet. And it's like a time of being nude.
You recall what kind of a plant this is?
It's Ricca? No,
Rotala?
Rotala. That's what I'm trying to think of.
Okay. Let's see. Might be a good spot for it over here.
I don't know if you want to keep it in that tank. I just want to do that so we can get a picture of it and you can see it.
Kind of an empty spot back here. So.
Now that is half of one branch.
Wow.
I just took the top off, okay? And that is one of probably 10 stems
Okay.
that are covering, as you saw in my video, the top of my corner tank. And that growth is so thick that I've had to do something with it, start spreading it out, and you'll see in the next video where I've moved it to give some more light to the other plants in that particular tank.
Okay.
So all I did went down to where I cut it off probably about 8 inches up from the roots. And so you have a bunch of branches there.
So you can see the amount of plant life that's
Yeah.
there. Now, I did some weeding of my 38 gallon over here 2 nights ago. And Jim gets so upset with my saying that, I throw these cuttings away. So anyway, this time I saved the cuttings and that's going home with you and you can do with it what you wish.
Okay.
But at any rate, to give you an idea of how much that's there, you see the amount of plant that you gave me.
Yep.
There'll be about triple the amount going back with you of cuttings that I would throw away, which you can throw away whatever you want to, salvage whatever you want to. But you're going home with that.
Well, I think it's interesting, Bruce, the difference in the gardening of these tanks. You've got, it's mid-range between what I see in many videos, which is just an open tank with maybe 2 plants in it and a bunch of fish. Right. And now you've got a very attractive layout of different varieties of plants and colors and shapes and everything. Right. And there's a lot of open space. Mine is like a jungle. And
Well, mine gets to be like a jungle some of the time, you know, before I weed it out. Now these two plants you see over here, the two different kabambas,
right?
the green and the orange,
Yeah.
just from what I took out of here and weeded out the other day, they were up to the surface of the water, both
Yep.
of them. And that's partly of what you're getting back.
Well, I see
Now,
what you're
there's some-
doing.
There's some Ludwigia growing behind the Amazon plant here.
Okay.
And that was getting up to the surface also, so I weeded that back.
See, now
But
you trim them
2/3
back to just a couple inches.
Oh, yeah. Because they grow so fast.
I see what you
If
mean.
I don't do that, I'd be weeding them every other day or so.
Yeah.
Because in a matter of a week, these two different colored kabambas are going to be almost to the surface of the water. That's how fast they grow.
It has been amazing, and I laughed at myself. I think I told you this joke. My wife and I were so impressed at how fast they were growing. I mean, it was getting to the top of the tank, and each day we looked at it, it had gone about 3 more inches till we finally realized it had uprooted and was just floating up.
Right.
But like you suggested, it has come from low in the tank.
You hadn't been using CO2 before that, right?
Not before that, no. And
Right.
so it just was there, and I was keeping my tanks populated with buying new plants,
Okay.
as opposed to growing, because I didn't have that kind of success that you're showing here.
Well, here's some of the additives that I use to my tanks.
Here, wait a minute, let me swing this around. Stay right there.
I'll take a seat here,
Okay.
and then I can take them out one at a time and just show them to you. This is the name of the
Potassium?
company is Flourish, and or no, Seachem, and this is Flourish Potassium. I use that only one day a week. This is what they call their Flourish, which is a general supplement, and I use that twice a week. This is the iron, which gets used twice a week.
Okay.
This is their XL, which is really the CO2, which I use every day. And then there's the trace elements from the same company, which I only use once a week.
Okay.
And those are the ingredients that I use to grow my plants.
Well, it's interesting because you've described this to me, and I have not the same brand, and so it's a little bit different. But when I talk about Leaf Zone, as I look at the ingredients, that's potassium and iron.
Okay.
So instead of individual ones there, and I do that once a week.
Okay.
And then I've got the CO2 that I never knew came in liquid form until you introduced me to it.
Right.
I use that daily, like you suggested.
Yep.
And then I have the plant tabs that I put under the major plants once a
Okay.
quarter.
Yeah, that's good to
And-
feed the root system in the.
And like I said, I
Plants.
totally converted from keeping the tanks filled with plants by buying them all the time to where I'm now trimming them like you. First time I came up here, you described the fact you were trimming back the kabamba, and I said, really? And you said, I can't keep up with it. Once a week I'm trimming these things back, and I'm thinking, wow. Well, now I'm almost there. Although I have to confess, when I trim, I'm not trimming like you do. Okay, I'm taking a kabamba that's in a tank that's about 28 inches high and has reached the surface and floating a little bit. Okay,
Okay.
so you got at least a 20-30 inch stem. Okay, and there's
Okay.
a bunch of them together, and I'll cut those off maybe about the 8 or 10 inch level,
Okay.
and then plant the top ends. Well, what's happening to me is it's growing again, but it's thinning out. In other words, it's not as lush and full until now. It's starting to fill out now, but
Okay.
I was disappointed because it was growing to the light, but the space between the florets of leaves
Right.
was thinning out. And I thought, oh
Okay.
wait, this isn't like you and I had looked at it.
Right.
But I gotta tell you, certain plants react very well with that. And so, for example, I was just zooming in on, and I'll do it again, that Amazon that you have just over your shoulder. And that is gorgeous.
Yeah. let me
I mean,
move to the
how
side of
many
that.
how many leaves would you count on that roughly? I'd bet
Oh, I
30.
guess about, yeah, maybe 25 anyway.
I always exaggerate on the positive side.
Yeah, okay.
But take us through the plants in this particular tank, because it's a beautiful tank. And starting in the left-hand corner with those reddish plants down there, what do you got there, and how long have you been growing them in there?
These plants, oh, these over here?
No.
No, this one here?
Yes.
That one is only a couple months old. It was about 1/3 the size when I got it.
Wow. And what is that?
Um,
And
You know,
I'm
I
saying
think-
that we both have the problem. We know some of the common plants, but others.
the scientific names are just hard to,
Oh, forget the
hard to
scientific.
remember.
Yeah, okay.
But incidentally, while I'm looking at it here, I'm seeing the killifish, which you'll have to come over to see yourself because they're not always out in front. I
Okay.
gotten them from the fish hut, that one place that I went to the one day.
Right.
The male is, you know, if you come out to the front of the tank, you'll be able to see him yourself. It's a gorgeous fish. To me, anyway, it looks like it's hand painted.
Oh, I see him up in the corner. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me. I'm moving the camera around. Our
And the
viewers are
female,
gonna.
the female is a solid color, kind of like his whole body, sort of an orange. And he's usually busy chasing her around, but I don't see her in here at the moment. Now he's at the back of the tank. You can see him very well. It's a golden lyre-tail killifish.
That I got him real nice and large and close up,
Yeah.
so we caught him well.
And they're adult size. That's about as big as they get, but very attractive. I've been tempted even to go back to that fish hut place because you don't see these killifish in many places. I'd like to get at least another pair of them anyway.
It's funny, I've never had killifish just because they seemed like they were less than hardy given some of the other bigger fish in the tank. So
they're fairly hardy, except, you know, they're, because they're grown in small ponds in South America, they lay their eggs and you have to keep their eggs in just a moist condition for a period of, maybe 6 months in some cases. So,
you got the big Amazon,
yeah.
and what's that? The water sprite or water wisteria to the right of the.
That's water wisteria.
That's what I thought. It really looks nice.
Yeah, and that grows very fast too. In a matter of about 2 weeks, that'll be up to the surface of the water, and I'll have to cut that back.
But you cut it back real short.
Oh, I do.
And that's.
Otherwise, I'd be doing this all the time.
And that kabamba, the first time I came here, you gave me some of the what I'm calling red kabamba, and it hasn't thrived yet. It's still alive. It's down in the corner. I'm trying to get it out where it's
Has
light.
it been growing?
Not as strong as yours do. Okay, and so the other kabamba is all over the place, and I'm trying
Maybe you need to use a little more CO2. Do they have a recommendation on the bottle? How
Yeah,
much you should
I
do?
follow the recommendation.
Oh, yeah, I follow the recommendation.
Yeah, but the kabamba in general is doing great. It was just I'm down to such a small sprig of that that it hasn't grown that big
Well,
yet.
you're going to get more of it going home.
Oh,
with you.
great! We love it.
Which incidentally, they'll all have root systems on them about this long.
Uh huh.
And you can cut those roots to half that size and they'll still do very well.
Okay.
I mean, even if you did cuttings of them, they would grow from just sheer cuttings.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're looking right down in the front, that real red plant, just to the left of the rocks. No, back.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the ones that I got with the, they call them
In vitro
tissue plants.
You better explain that because I don't think many of our viewers
Well,
know what that is. I know I didn't.
It's grown in an environment that's pure, you might say. So you can't get any snail eggs with it or anything like that. It's just a pure environment.
Now I remember
They have a
looking
name
at
for
it.
but I forget exactly what they call it.
It was
Tissue culture plants is what they're called,
Okay.
and it's grown in an environment that is. There's a term, but I can't think of the term that you use. Pure is the closest I can come to it in terms of what it's, how it's grown. But there's no way you can, when you buy plants that way, they are in a perfect environment, or come from a perfect environment, so that you can't get any issues for things that the plants might be carrying, because they don't carry anything.
Okay.
No snail eggs, no foreign things of any sort.
But the thing that threw me, it's almost like a thimble full of plants for like
Yeah.
12, 13 bucks, which seemed like a lot of money, but you invested in that.
Yeah.
And as you described it, you got about how many plants throughout the tank?
I got about a dozen plants out of it.
Amazing.
And you'll be going home with at least one of them, maybe two.
And the plants we just saw here, they're small, but they're growing quite a bit from the tiny plants that were in that thimble that had 12 or 13 plants in it.
That's
you can only
true.
imagine.
That's true, but they're still very slow growing, and I'm not sure why.
And so I'm looking right past your face there at the discus. Gorgeous discus.
Oh, the big ones there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's two females. The only way I know that is both of them laid eggs at different times. And they seem to have gotten over that. And they used to bicker a lot more than they do now. Now they get along fairly well together.
I saw one of your killies just go by. I don't know if it was in the video or not.
Oh.
The female just went by.
Oh,
very,
okay.
Very bright colored. And are these the large neons you were talking about? Where are the jumbo ones you were talking about? Sorry,
Well,
I kept it.
when they come out, you'll recognize them,
Okay.
because they'll be much larger than what you're seeing here.
All right.
And I'm hoping that the ones that are in here of a smaller size will say, wow, that's how big we can get. I guess we can eat more than what we've been doing.
It's not showing up in the video, but I can see them at the base of these plants way in the back.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, when they come out, I mean, they're outstanding. Huge in size. And at Discus Madness, they had 2 tanks of them, which I would guess each tank must have held about 200 cardinal tetras.
really?
And they're good sized tanks. They were probably 30-gallon tanks. Still, it seemed like they were overloaded with the number of fish for the size tank.
Uh-huh.
And he said he had one source he got them from, and they really knew what they were doing, and they really had a wide variety of food that they would feed them, and they'd get them up to size fairly quickly. Because I was concerned they might be at the end of their rope, that, you know,
Yeah.
they were older, but he said no, that's not the case.
All right, and they were 10 bucks a piece, you said.
$10 a piece. I did get 2 of them.
Compared to, I would say, a cardinal you can usually get for anywhere from $2.50 to $2.99 at these stores.
Yeah, I think the smaller ones that I have, that the number had gotten down on that, so I bought a dozen of them at Discus Madness, and I think they were $3 or $4 a piece. I forget which.
Mm-hmm.
But all the stuff at Discus Madness seemed to be in very good health. I didn't find a dead fish in any one of the tanks.
That's the way it should
And
be.
consider that we went on a Monday. When I first called up to make a reservation to go see them, I said Monday. They opened at 10 o'clock. I said, so I'd like to be there at 10. He said, well, we're just coming off the weekend. We got a lot of stuff to catch up to. Could you come at 10:30 instead? And I said, sure, not a problem. And I prefer to go to most fish places on a Monday, because they won't have just gotten fish in that they're trying to sell you, which I don't think Discus Madness would do anyway, but a lot of places do. They get the fish in, and the same day they get them in, they're selling them.
And now,
And
Discus Madness, just
so-
give them a promo. They're where? North Jersey?
Union. It's
Union,
only
New
about
Jersey.
half an hour north of here.
Okay. I passed by this last trip because I had other things going on, but next time I'll take you up on it.
Yeah,
Because I
okay.
really wasn't interested in discus as such, but you said they had a lot of other fish.
Huge variety of other
Yeah,
fish as
okay.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
And they had some platinum angelfish there, not as good a body conformation and finish as what I saw at the show on Sunday, but still quite good. And they had black angels and marble angels. They had several different color variations of angels as well.
All right, moving across the fish room into the last 2 tanks. Talk about what's been going on with these 2 tanks. And what size is the small one right in front of us
The small one
here?
is a 10-gallon tank. It has the Endler's Libearers in it, which are psychedelic colors. And they're all males, because that's what people prefer, is the colorful fish. and only the males have the color. The females are like female guppies and very plain. At any rate, there's some live shrimp in there also, cherry shrimp, which are red in color. And I only came to find out recently in reading one article that if they're not fully cherry color, if they're sort of very mild cherry coloring, they're the males.
Huh.
And the females, and unusual in the animal world that the females would have the greater color.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what I read
that is
about
different.
anyway. And there's some dwarf catfish in here too, also of the Corydorus family, and they stay very small. They only grow to about 3/4 of an inch.
Really?
That's the only reason I keep the shrimp in there, because the shrimp are almost as big as those two guys, and they're not bothered by the, I mean, maybe some fish gang up on them at times and kill one and eat it, I'm not sure.
Now let me just switch subjects just for a minute. Stay with me here. My heater in the office tank went, and I had to replace the heater. And so all of a sudden I'm paying attention to the temperature, which I never noticed before. What temperature do you have that tank at? I see the thermometer's right on the front there.
10 gallon?
Yeah.
That's at about 80 degrees.
Okay.
And my other tanks, the one with the discus they're about 84. And this one over here is about 80 also. The one with the giant Danios and Congo tetras. Very active tank. They eat an unbelievable amount, the fish in that tank, and they're a lot more active, so probably why they have a lot more of an appetite as well.
Beautiful finnage on the Congo tetras.
It is. Yeah.
That white trim on their fins almost makes it look ghostly.
And the center of the tail fin is going to get a feathery growth out of it as they mature more.
And
because they're all males.
Now,
Again, a lot of places sell only the male fish because they have the color and that's what the people want.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of compatibility in a tank, I think you're better off if you have an equal number of females, or in some cases you should have twice as many females as you have males, so the females don't get beat up too much.
Well, I noticed your black barbs in there.
Yeah,
and
they're called black ruby barbs.
And I've got, I think I've shown you on my video, the long-finned black
I remember your
barbs, and they're gorgeous. They have such color fins, the orange tail to them almost, etc. So interesting. And let's talk about the plants in here, Bruce. You've got your water sprite to the left and way in the back.
Right.
And then you've got a mother plant, a mother sword. Look at the size of the babies off that mother.
I know.
That's
and
beautiful.
If you like, I'll give you one of those baby plants. But I think you said you had a mother plant also.
I have one, and they're just starting to do the same thing, but I've never gotten to that size. That's amazing. Maybe with the fertilization program, they will thrive.
So, at any rate, I guess you don't need any more Amazons.
I'm going to pass by on that. The Amazons seem to be reacting to the fertilizer better than any other plant.
Yeah.
But now down in the center there, I couldn't help but notice your beautiful banana plant leaves. Look at the size of those leaves.
I know.
How long have you had those?
Oh gosh, at least a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah.
And are they?
One on the right-hand side as well.
Yep, I see it. And
occasionally they'll send a leaf to the surface.
Yep.
And I'll cut it off because I don't want it cutting out light to the other plants.
Mm-hmm. Now, are the bananas above the gravel, or are they just rooted at this point? It's been around so long.
Eventually the bananas just disappear. And I never rooted. The bananas aren't supposed to be planted anyway.
Right.
And once the banana portion of the plant has dissolved or whatever, they had already sent off roots from the bananas that had gotten down into the gravel, and so
they're getting their nutrients.
Just how they evolved.
And is that the red kabamba right down between those two big leaves of the banana plants? Right in the center?
Yes, it is. That's right.
Very nice looking. I love that coloration. So does my wife Pam. So we're looking forward to what you've harvested.
Way to the right-hand side, that's not kabamba. That's ambulia.
Okay.
Which the leaf structure
a little bit different.
is closer together than it is in the kabamba.
I love the ambulia because it's so soft green.
Yes, it is.
It's beautiful.
Remember the myriaphyllum we used to get at what lake was that? Farrington, I guess, right? Farrington Lake we used to go to?
Lawrence Brook.
Orange brook, okay.
Yeah. How about, and the red plants, they look like the wiggy. I don't know if they are or not, over in that side of the tank.
On the right-hand side?
Yeah, what are they?
Yeah,
Do
I'm not sure what they are.
They look like a type of wiggy, but the leaves look a little bit different. But I love the coloration.
They had kind of almost died, and I had about given up on them, but there were still a couple sprigs left on them, and I decided, well, nature is amazing how it can come back.
Especially
So I
when you're
decided,
feeding
well,
it.
Yeah, I decided, well, let me keep the small pieces, and maybe it was a case of initially it was grown in a different chemistry of water, so it didn't adjust too well to my water. But when it got down to the fact that there was hardly anything left, maybe it already made the adjustment to my water, and that's how it came back.
Could be, could be. I'll tell you, that red plant, it's the underside of the leaf that's red. The
That's
top
right.
is
Yeah.
like a brown or
It
a
does,
tan. Huh?
brownish green, right,
Right, so we've got the ambulia over here,
right.
that huge sword. Your swords do amazing with this fertilization program.
Yeah.
They really thrive on that. We've got 3 sprigs of that. I've been putting those in bunches, but I like the way you've got them separated individual stems.
Okay.
And then over here, I don't know if we'll see this in the frame or not, you have more of those dozen plants you got from the, what do we call them?
Let's see.
Whatever.
Where did I get that? That was from,
Isn't that part of that dozen you got from that small?
yeah, the tissue growth
Yeah,
plants.
tissue growth, that's what
Yeah.
we call them.
As a matter of fact, those I can give you the name because I had saved the literature on it, which had the name on it, and I'm pretty
Okay.
sure I've got it over here.
On with your,
No, that wasn't it. Here it is. Okay. Dennerle.
spell it.
Dennerle.
That's a type of plant or that's a brand?
That's a type of plant.
Huh,
I believe so, anyway.
yeah.
They also call it in vitro plants.
That's what I was trying to think of. Oh, and there's
No,
the
here's
picture
the
on the
name of the
back.
plant on the back.
Okay, there we
Oh
go.
wow, I can't even pronounce this.
Oh, I didn't have my glasses with me, but anyway. Yeah. Pretty red plant.
Exactly. Exactly.
There are these guys out in these videos that know their scientific names, and they always blow me away because I can't remember them, so it doesn't help at all when they say, you know, some Latin name. But anyway,
I understand the Latin name, you know, to keep things
Yeah.
straight and the way they are and so forth, to have the correct nomenclature for them. But it's like, how many people know that the Oscar fish his actual name is Astronatus ocellatus?
Oh, you're showing off.
Why that always stuck with me over the years, I don't know. Some scientific names stay with me, some escape me altogether.
Know the feeling well. Know the feeling well. Well, I'm trying to think what else we want to cover while we got this before we shut it down. Bruce, anything else you can think of that you want to talk about?
Not offhand, no, I think we pretty much covered everything.
I'm going to come back over to your, what, 38 gallon, did you
38
say?
gallon, yeah.
And there's some plants down in the corner here that we didn't capture from the front that look gorgeous. Almost looks like a lily
Yeah,
leaf of
it's
some
a,
type.
It is a lily.
Okay.
It's a dwarf lily, but I forget what the actual nomenclature for that is as well.
Now, the first time I
And
came...
this longleaf thin plant here,
Yeah.
that's a type of hygrophila,
Okay.
but it's a different strain.
You know, it's funny. I had 2 of those that grew up long and then floating at the top. I've replanted them, and I don't recall seeing them recently because I put them toward the back, and I make sure I've got lighting in the back also. So I have to go back and see what they're doing. But you talk about that dwarf plant. Remember the first time I came up here, you gave me a bulb from the big tank over here.
That was, yeah, from
I
this.
dropped it in the bow tank, lost it. You know, it was down in the
Right, I
in the
understand.
forest.
I understand.
And more recently, I've got a dwarf plant coming up from nothing. So I think that's what it was.
That's what it was?
A bulb
Okay.
from that, and it's doing just fine. It's got
Yeah.
2 small leaves, but they're starting to grow out.
Okay.
And I thank you again. We're having a good time sharing the wealth
Yeah.
of our...
And I've never had a plant type actually put a bulb out before that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was a seed from your own plant.
It was uncommon growth for me to see.
Huh. The other thing that I got just recently, and I couldn't resist, where was I that I picked this up? I'm trying to think. Fish Factory, I think. Anyway, there was a banana plant there with red leaves, and they're good-sized red leaves, and I got that and the Madagascar lace plant at the same time. And the reason I like that particular...
What size is your Madagascar?
What size is it?
Yeah.
It's almost to the top of the tank now.
Really?
In about a week, the leaves have gone from, I would say, 4 inches to about 12 inches.
Wow.
And there's 3 of them now.
And no algae growth on the leaves?
None at all. None
That's
at
great.
all.
You know, I had a Madagascar, which I still have. If you look down from the top here, I think you'll be able to see it. I had replanted it. I pulled it up because I thought it was dead. There were a lot of dead leaves on it, or a lot of dead root growth that I tore away. And I thought, well, I don't know if it's going to make it, but let me try it. It's making a comeback, but it's extremely small. If you look down from the top here, you'll see it just to the left of that plant that's sort of spiky.
Oh yeah. It's really tiny. Yeah.
There's maybe 3 or 4 leaves on it right now, but the leaves are
I'm going to move in
small.
real close, but I don't know if we're going to be able to see it or not. We're going to try. But right down, just to the left of those 3 spoon-leafed plants, right at the gravel level.
Yeah, whether that's going to come back again or not, I don't know. At one time, it had fairly good-sized leaves on it. I think you had seen it. Mm-hmm. And it had about 7 leaves at that time. And all the leaves were pretty good size, but it developed algae on the leaves, and it wasn't getting any more growth on it. And I thought it was dead, and I pulled it out, and it looked like it still had some life to it, so I replanted it, and just recently it's coming up. So whether that'll reestablish itself or not, I don't know.
Well, the other thing I meant to focus on here in this tank is that carpet plant you've got through most of the tank. I mean,
this plant here?
Yeah, this tank looks like it's what, about 36 inches long or maybe more?
48.
48? Yeah. And that carpet goes from almost one end clear down to another batch of it to the left.
And just recently, I had cut the tops off. It was up to about this height. I just cut it right about here.
And look at it coming back.
Yeah, it comes back very well.
It's responding very well to your very careful fertilization program. And I'm following your blue betta here. And you said, where are you going to put that red betta?
That's going to go in the 38 gallon.
Okay.
I can't put a betta in the 29 gallon because I'm afraid those fish with their swift movements would tear the finish up.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Okay, well listen, I'm going to shut this down now and thank you again for a great visit and a great tour, and I'll edit it down a little bit, but as you saw in some of the messages I'm sharing, we have followers in North Ireland, for example. David in North Ireland is corresponding with us.
Yeah.
And so it's really neat that we have a hobby that is really worldwide.
It is that.
And he was describing his local fish shops. I was asking what they have over there, like our PetSmart. And he had a PetSmart, but it went out of business and it's now a Pet something else.
Oh, I see.
And so...
just selling dry goods, probably?
No, he says he goes get fish there. So whoever had it just opened up as something else. But Bruce, let me ask you this. How old are you now and how long have you been with fish?
Well, I'm 80.
You're very young, 80. I had to wait for him because he was out playing tennis this morning.
Yeah. Let's see. I started my first fish tank, I think, when I was about 8 or 10 years old. A friend of my father's had a tank he was getting rid of, and it had some guppies in it. He gave me the tank and the guppies all together, and that's what got me started.
You know, it's funny because we have a video of Ray saying almost the exact same thing. His father took him to a friend's shop or something, and he had a guppy tank there, and he ended up with a guppy tank, and for the next 70 years, he was in the hobby just like you're describing. It's pretty amazing.
A curious story. I mean, when I first started out, there wasn't much available in the way of equipment or whatever. Air pumps they had, and they weren't even very good quality. They would burn out in a short period of time. But I remember we would make our own lights by taking a gallon-size can of tomato juice, cut it in half, so you had 2 reflectors, and you'd cut a hole in the side of one of them, and you'd put a socket in there, and you could put maybe a 40 or 60 watt bulb in it, and that's how we made our light fixtures at that time, because there was very little available in the industry itself.
Well, somebody figured out they could make money by building lights, and we have so many choices today, and now with LEDs and those other ones that hang above because they generate so much heat.
I don't know if you remember the Supreme.
I know the name.
Supreme heaters.
Okay.
In my opinion, were the best heaters on the market. For example, when we first set up our shop back in '59 on Main Street, we used all Supreme heaters at that time, and the 50 watters that we put in the 10-gallon tanks were still working at the time that we went out of business in '97.
Wow, that says a lot.
Yeah.
And
and yet that company is pretty much gone. He makes a couple of different varieties of submergible pumps, and that's the only thing I know of that he makes. As a matter of fact, one of my customers went to his plant that he made his material in, and my customer was a German, and so was trying to think of the name of the gentleman who ran the Supreme company. Can't think of it offhand, but they hit it off very well, and he had some questions for him about one of his pumps or something, and he came back and told me about it.
Very neat.
Yeah, he had actually gotten together with the owner, president, CEO, whatever you want to call him, of the Supreme company, and they still, not only did they make the Supreme heaters, but he made it that the cartridge was a plug-in that could be replaced, that had the condenser in it in order to eliminate any interference with like other electrical equipment.
Huh. Those were the days.
And the heating coils, you could remove them and put new ones in there. You had replacement parts for all this stuff.
Wow, not
you had
today.
Replacement pilot light, for example.
Wow.
All these parts were replaceable in all the different sizes.
That's amazing.
It was really, I couldn't understand why that company went out of business. They made the best heaters I thought ever. Now they aren't submergible. They were never submergible. That's the only advantage to the new ones that are on the market.
Now I noticed you have 2 heaters in this tank. So is that redundant?
That's right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of them isn't even plugged in at the moment.
Okay. Well, Bruce, I'm going to sign off the video at this point, and again, thank you. This is a house with a room that is truly a fish room, and it's not just tanks around the walls. It's a comfortable room. It's got a sofa bed of some type in it here, or trundle bed rather, a nice chair to sit in and enjoy the fish.
And I often just lay down in the bed and observe the tanks. And I can change, from one end to my head at one end to the other, so I can see. From this side, if I put my head up on this side, I can see the 10-gallon and the 29. I can even see the 38 over there. Obviously, I can't see the 55 behind me. But if I put my head up at that end, I can observe the 55 and the 38-gallon tank.
Well, it's sort of interesting. I sometimes feel envious of these people like Ray, who had a basement full of tanks, 22 tanks, and they could slop around because it was in the basement. Right. As opposed to mine's up in the living room and you were in a room like this. But look at the advantage we have of being able to lay back and enjoy the tanks, and you don't have to leave the family to go take care of your fish. So there's pros and cons.
My wife is very understanding of my fish hobby, and I get to do what I want with it. As a matter of fact, did you ever hear the story about this 55-gallon, how we got it?
No, tell me about it.
Well, my daughter had rescued a dog in North Carolina, and one of our neighbors down the street was interested in taking it on, but only if it got along with her 2 cats. And if that didn't work out, we were going to get the dog. I figured this was a
negotiating point.
Yeah, exactly. I figured I was getting taken in by 3 women: my daughter, my wife, and the gal down the street. Anyhow, She took the dog at first. It got along with one of her cats, but not the other one. So she said, "You're going to have to take the dog over," which delighted my wife. So I said, "Okay, if you get the dog, then I get a 55-gallon tank to add to my fish room."
She couldn't argue with that.
Not too much, no.
And here he is at 80.
That's how I wound up.
At 80, wanting to open up a fish room in his basement with more tanks.
Yep.
God bless you, Bruce.
Yep.
Hey, thanks again for the memories, for the insights from the industry when you were running your own shop, and for sharing such beautiful gardens of plants and
It's always
stuff.
great when we get together and just discuss everything about our fish tanks.
Hey, more to come. For now, this is Bruce and Jim signing off.
Yep.